attending our meeting. I would much rather prefer it being at Kapolei High School so I could feed you some coffee and drinks and donuts, but here we are in these very strange times. So welcome to my Listen Story community meeting for Senate District 20, which includes Kapolei, Makakilo, and portions of Ewa, Waipahu, and Kalaeloa. Little background for those of you that don't know, I was elected in 2006 to the State Senate. Prior to that, I served on the Honolulu City Council representing District 1, which is Kimberly Pine's present seat, from Ewa to Makaha. And I am currently the chair of the Agriculture Environment Committee in the Senate. And so Listen Story, we call it Listen Story because usually when we have our community meetings, I speak for the first 5 or 10 minutes, and I turn it over to the community to discuss issues and concerns for the rest of the hour, with one exception, and that's today. At the end of the session, I do a wrap-up where I do a lot of talking. So there'll be plenty of time. I think there's not too many people attending, and I do have quite a lot of stuff to talk about, but I think there'll be time at the end to do some Q&A. So before I do the legislative wrap-up, I'd like to do a brief COVID-19 update, and then I'll take some questions after that. Then I'll do the legislative wrap-up. And so if we don't get to, for some reason, any of your concerns or issues in today's meeting, then, oh, by the way, Rock and Meg. Rock is my chief of staff. He's online here, and also Meg, she's on as well. So to get right into it, COVID-19 update. So, and I'll do these kind of chronological by when they were announced. UH's 10 campus system, they plan to restart their classes on August 24th. About a third of their reduction on-campus housing at UH Manoa, at UH Hilo. And obviously they're going to be, all the social distancing, the masks, et cetera, will be in play. July 9th, our Hawaii Department of Health, they began shutting down restaurants and bars that are not adhering to the rules that have been set up to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. They were, if they're not following it, then they will be temporarily suspended. They're given a red card to display, and then they've got to get back into compliance. And if they do that, then they're allowed to reopen. We have, next, we have 287 public schools, roughly, I think, about 180,000 students. And as of July 12th, it was announced that the schools will reopen on August 4th. And most of the public schools in Hawaii, they're going to offer a combination of on-campus and online education. Some, they plan to resume their daily in-person instructions for all of their students. And so the principals, they selected the different learning models after talking with their staff and their communities, and basically a campus by campus situation. I saw Superintendent Kishimoto on the evening news last night. She mentioned that 84% of the parents that they polled wanted to do it this way. Have in-person and blended, and like a hybrid kind of situation where in-person instruction for some students, and then the online as well. Almost all the secondary students, they opted for that blended rotation of in-person and distance learning. And there was also this hybrid model where the vulnerable students are going to receive face-to-face instruction daily. She also mentioned, Superintendent Kishimoto mentioned that August 19th, they open on the 4th, and on August 19th, they're going to start their extracurricular activities. And the reporter said, does that include football? Because it had been announced earlier in the news broadcast that football was going to be restarting. And she said, no, it does not include sports. It'll just be after school activities, but she did not go into any detail. So check with your principal if you have kids in school, because again, it's going campus by campus. Okay, and then the July 13th, the governor also, he extended the ban on evictions related to non-payment of rent or mortgages. On the next day, on the 14th, the mayor announced that bars and restaurants, they're ordered to stop serving liquor after midnight, effective immediately, in response to the concerns about the spread of the coronavirus. And interesting, the Star Advertiser, they had on July 15th, they had a poll of the majority of Hawaii residents, they opposed reopening tourism because of the pandemic. And there was a report called Life Under Lockdown, Hawaii Resident Assessment of COVID-19 Restrictions. And 81%, which I thought was very interesting, 81% of the residents said that they do not want tourists coming here to Hawaii right now. And then getting into the legislative session, to give you an idea of how this was different, in 2020, there were 2019, there were 3,142 bills that were introduced and 303 passed into law. This session, there were 2,356 bills introduced and 82 passed into law, just to give you an idea of how different this particular session was. So hang on a second. Technical difficulties here. Okay. So with the session, we normally, as we start on January 15th, right? And the mid-January, which we did this year. Oh, before I get into the session, I also wanted to mention a few related to the whole COVID thing, a few worthwhile projects that are going on during these surreal times. Number one is, you may have noticed in Civil Beat this week, on the 16th, they had an article called Pandemic Changing How Hawaii Gets Its Food. And there was an interesting story, being the chair of the Agriculture Environment Committee, there was an interesting story about a pig farmer on Maui who sales were down, and he's growing like 10,000 tons of purple sweet potato every week to feed his pigs. So he said, well, what am I going to do with all this sweet potato? So he started just bagging it up, distributing it to people who needed it, and then switched over to feeding his pigs grains or something, which I thought was pretty cool. Also, there was a guy came up with an app called, he's at exchangeav.com. It allows users here in Hawaii to barter, trade goods and services. For example, that pig farmer on Maui, he's got all the sweet potato. He can get on there and find out his neighbor down the street, she's got a ton of ong choy or radish, whatever, right? And they can start swapping. So I thought it's kind of cool how, one of the upsides of what this pandemic is doing is bringing people together and just look at this different economy it's starting to grow. Also, there was on the news last night a store called Panda General Store, and they seem to be doing fairly well. Here on Oahu, you can order your food online, fresh produce as well as locally made food here. They deliver for free, orders $50 or more. So that's something you might also want to consider. And then finally, I also wanted to mention the Kapolei Chamber of Commerce. They got this, you may have seen it already. It's Eat, Love, Kapolei. So they've got a little campaign going on to dine at local restaurants here on the West Side. And so if you dine in, and whether it's dine in or take out, 8 times at one of the West Side restaurants by July 31st, and you're qualified for a $200 gift certificate and other prizes as well. But again, the Kapolei Chamber of Commerce doing things to encourage people to support our businesses here on the West Side. Okay, so as far as the legislative wrap-up, as I mentioned, we usually start mid-January, which we did, and we end usually the first week of May. But this year, because of COVID, we basically have 3 mini sessions. The first one started on January 15th, which was my 72nd birthday. And, you know, bills, as per usual, the bills were introduced, they referred to committees for hearings, and things were going on normally until March 16th. And due to the COVID-19, we recessed the 2020 legislative session. So then we came back into session, a mini session from May 11th to 21st. And that was primarily to pass our state budget. And also during that time, the state received $1.25 billion from the federal CARES Act. That's the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. And of that $1.25 billion, $863 million went to the state. The city and county of Honolulu got $387 million. County of Hawaii County got $80 million, roughly. These are rough numbers. Maui got $66 million. Kauai got $28 million. And that money, you may have noticed that we put roughly $636 million into the rainy day fund. And I'll go into that in a little bit about how that money was spent. In terms of how Senate District 20 did, we have called Capital Improvement Projects, CIP money. We did fairly well. We got $186.5 million for additional projects in our community. The VA long-term care facility in Kapolei, that's across from Walmart in that big open field, got $30.1 million. East Kapolei High School, as we all know, we need a new high school out here. And that's, for those of you that aren't sure where it is, it's going to be between Farrington and H1, just east of Koloka'i Parkway. You can just visualize that. So that's there. We got $3 million for planning, designing, and construction. We're nowhere near completion, of course, but we're just getting started on that. So $3 million for East Kapolei High School. And then for East Kapolei Middle School, we got $46 million, and that's for the design and construction. $400,000 for Kapolei High School for ADA improvements. Another $6 million for Kapolei High School for classroom renovations. Widening the Farrington Highway between the golf course and Fort Weaver Road, $100 million. We got allocated for that. And then Kapolei Parkway safety wall improvements. That's the intersection of Kapolei Parkway and Kamaha Street. $50,000 for that. Now, keep in mind that money is all appropriated, but the next step is for the governor to release those funds for those various projects. Okay, so that's the 2 mini sessions. The third mini session started on June 22nd and ended just last Friday, July 10th. And during this time, we passed Senate Bill 126, which addressed that $648 million that we had put into the rainy day fund. And how that, one of the things that UHERO, that's the UH Economic Research Organization, they're estimating that $1 billion for the states, how this money was rolling out, how we allocated this money, is going to generate $1 billion for the state's GDP and support 6,500 jobs. So here's a breakdown of how that money has been allocated. $230 million for the Department of Labor and Industrial Relations. That's for their unemployment insurance weekly benefits. And that program will start on August 1st and will end on December 31st. As you probably know, the federal portion, the federal monies that are providing $600 a week for the unemployment, that ends on July 31st. So this will provide, assist 117,000 beneficiaries by providing $100 per week in enhanced state unemployment benefits. And those who are currently unemployment recipients are eligible, not the PUA recipients. The PUA, you probably know, that's those who are those that are do not have conventional jobs or independent contractors, et cetera. And then $100 million for Hawaii Housing Finance and Development Corporation rental assistance. That's going to provide 50% of the rent, or $500 per month. That'll help 34,000 beneficiaries. And that rent relief payment will be for 5 months. $100 million to HEMA, the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency. That will be for assist child care, elderly care facilities, hospitals, small businesses, et cetera. $90 million for DOT for thermal screening purchases and security protocols. This funding will also include a web-based traveler verification app, traveler verification room swap, and testing facilities. You may have seen on the evening news as well that the company that's going to be doing the thermal screening at the airport got the contract. I don't have a beginning date when that's going to start, but pretty interesting. So it's not going to be, the question was asked on the news, well, is this going to delay getting through the lines through TSA? And the answer is no, because it's basically kind of this ubiquitous camera that's going to take pictures randomly. And when it detects somebody that has a temperature of 100.4 or above, then it'll flag that person. They'll have to go through a secondary screening process from there and next steps. Okay, and then during this last little mini session, we were instructed by our Senate leadership that we were only allowed to deal with bills that did not have a fiscal impact on the state. And so two of the notable ones, being the chair of the Agriculture Environment Committee, was House Bill 1819. And that was the hemp bill. Some of you know, I've been to my previous community meetings, I've been talking about hemp for a long time. For those of you who don't know, while hemp is a cousin of cannabis, you cannot get high on industrial hemp, so it's not legalizing marijuana. But 2014 is when we first got started. We had a pilot project which continues, but this final bill that we got passed, it basically, it sets up, it allows our farmers to grow industrial hemp. It sets up a growing, processing, and sale of industrial hemp in Hawaii. And growing this industry, it's going to be, especially with COVID-19, I think it's going to be a great opportunity for economic development, diversification of our economy. You know, as this incredible plant has over 25,000 products that are made out of it. And so we're close to making that Hawaii hemp brand a reality. And that's what's going to set us apart from all the other the producers of hemp across the world, is that, you know, with the hula girl on the label and the guy strumming his ukulele underneath the coconut tree, Hawaiian hemp granola visualize, so many products. So I was just happy that this passed. And what this bill does is it sets up the program where the farmers will get their license directly from the USDA instead of having to get it through the local Department of Ag. And what this bill accomplishes, it saves about $500,000. Had we gone through the state process, It would cost $500,000 to hire the personnel in Department of Ag to deal with all these hemp-related projects. So we're going directly to the USDA. And we also, there's approximately 50 Hawaii hemp farmers now that are enrolled in the pilot program. And so they are grandfathered into this bill, so they don't have to apply with the, there's some buffer zones, 500-foot buffer zones that were set up. There were some complaints coming from communities in Maui, primarily in Kula, about some of the hemp businesses there with their fans going on all night and the smell coming from them. And so we wrote that into the bill that the farmers who are already in operation, that they are grandfathered in. We also wrote into the bill that the Department of Ag has to come up with procedures on how to deal with these nuisance complaints that are coming in. And also we put a 2-year sunset on the bill so we can look at it 2 years from now and just see how the whole program's going. But again, I really hope that this is going to be an economic boon for our state. And another bill that I introduced, Senate Bill 2701, and it deals with fake farms. You may have read articles in the paper or seen it in the media about these guys, people who get on ag land and because it's cheaper, and then they don't have any intent of farming. But what this bill that passed, 2701, it allows the fire department, also county agencies, to enter the property with reasonable notice to investigate ag buildings to make sure that their ag buildings are in compliance with our current law. Okay, and then let's see. Now, part of this, though, key legislative dates to remember is that the 35th day after the adjournment, that would be August 31st, that is the deadline by which the governor has to inform the legislature that he intends to veto. So any of the bills that were passed by the Senate and the House, he's got to let us know by August 31st. The second key deadline is on the 45th day after adjournment. That will be September 15th. Any of the bills, if he does veto any, we have to come back on September 15th. And that gives us the opportunity to override those vetoes. And so we need a 2/3 vote in the House, a 2/3 vote in the Senate to override the vetoes. Okay, and then what I thought I would do, I would just go through and mention a few other, some highlights of some of the agriculture environment bills that passed. Let's see, coastal zone management, we've got that passed. That's deals with sea level rise, coastal hazards that the state has to address. This bill prohibits shoreline erosion structures, hardening on sandy beaches unless there's a granting of a variance that's clearly in the public interest. Okay, what else? Also, now, yeah, that's basically it. There are a whole bunch of other ones that passed, but oh, you may have seen the ones that SB 2386. Those of you that use the PVT construction landfill out in across from Colina, excuse me, not across from Colina. That's the Waimanalo Gulch. This is farther out in Nanakuli. You may have seen that a bill was passed that basically is going to shut them down. They are near breaking point now in terms of space. And so what this does is that it requires in 7 to 10 years, because they're going to run out of space, it's going to shut them down. They had asked for an extension, but it prevents, the bill that passed, it prevents them and other landfills from expanding if they're within a half mile from a residential, school, or hospital property line. So, yeah. All right, and then skipping along to agriculture AEN bills and environment bills that failed. I was disappointed that House Bill 2192, we call it the greenhouse size expansion. This would have expanded talk about helping farmers. Currently, there's a 20,000 square foot limit on greenhouses. Shade, cloth, cold frame, and greenhouse structures. This bill would have expanded it to 60,000. It failed in the House. Also, there was another SB 2706 that failed. And again, that was another one that looks at the proliferation of fake or gentleman farms. And so, unfortunately, that one didn't make it either. So next year, right? Also, SB 2717, this is a bill that I introduced. I was really disappointed in this one. This is back in 2010, we passed a law that banned, we were the nation's first law to pass a ban on shark fin and shark fin products. And it's really become a global model for shark conservation. And so this bill would have banned someone from knowingly capturing, possessing, abusing, or entangling any shark, whether alive or dead, or killing any shark in state waters. And, because they're such an important part of our entire ocean ecosystem. There were exemptions in there for research on sharks. And also, if you accidentally catch a shark while you're fishing, there was exemptions for that. But again, that one died in the House Judiciary Committee. And we'll look at introducing again next year, if I'm there next year. I just say that because it is an election year, and we'll see what happens on November 3rd. Another bill that failed was that I introduced was Senate Bill 2781, balloon release. This bill would prohibit the intentional release of balloons that are inflated with lighter than air gases. We were asked to introduce this by Susan Frazier of a group, a nonprofit called Beach, their beach cleanup group, based on a New Jersey model, because they're just finding a whole bunch of balloons on the seashore, and also it's affecting our marine life. And there again, in that bill, there were exemptions for research, for meteorological purposes, hot air balloons, there were exemptions, but that one did not pass as well. Okay, and then now for other bills that were not agriculture environment bills, so a few bills that passed or that are of note. You may have seen in the news about the Fernhurst YWCA Fernhurst Women's Program. We did the Department of Public Safety, they were going to close the program down. This is a rehab program basically for women, and then put all the women back in prison. And then they finally, basically it was the chair of the Finance Committee, Sylvia Luke in the House, I think, who led the charge on this, but from the whole legislature, asked them to do the math, and they found out that it was actually cheaper for them to stay where they were instead of shipping them back to prison. So we were able to allocate $450,000 for funding for that Fernhurst Women's Program, which helps women get back on their feet again and helps classes, et cetera, and a huge success rate in terms of women getting out of prison and getting back into being contributing to their communities. Also, HB 285 passed. You may have seen that one in the news. That had to do with requiring county police departments to disclose to the legislature the identity of any officer upon suspension or discharge. That a bit controversial. We had the police union SHOPO down at the legislature protesting, and it's basically bringing more transparency on police misconduct, and that's why I voted in favor of the bill. The police department is the only public workers that are exempted from this disclosure. And so that was another reason why I voted in favor for that. Red light cam. Okay, for you red light runners out there, you got to stop. We did pass it establishes a photo red light imaging detector systems program at red lights. and the county will be in charge of that. We have no date. It's going to take a while for them to it's a 2-year pilot program, and the money was allocated to the city and county of Honolulu to get that started. Also, HB 2543, early learning. This provides our Hawaii's 3 to 4-year-old children access to early learning by the year 2030 and appropriate funds to support pre-kindergarten Hawaiian language immersion programs. And so I voted in support of that. And now here are some of the non-AEN bills that failed. The vaping bill that would have banned the advertising or sale of flavored tobacco products, including vaping materials. That did not pass. I voted in support of that. Extremely high rate of usage amongst our young people. And yeah, so again, we'll see what happens with that. One that caught a lot of news, media attention, you might have, was House Bill 2502, giving the DOH COVID powers. Got a lot of testimony on that one. I voted no on this. It did not pass. And the main complaint that I was hearing is just there was not a right balance between protecting the public's health during the pandemic and the need to respect and preserve civil liberties. And so the question there was, are we giving too much power in the hands of the director of the Department of Health and the governor? Let's see. You may have seen, okay, and yeah, that's basically it. So now I'd like to do the community updates, and then I'll open it up for questioning. Let me just check my timing right now, okay. Around the district, Barbers Point Solar Project. There is a 15 megawatt solar project with a 60 megawatt battery system. It'll produce enough to power 6,200 homes. It's on 3 parcels of DHH land right around Coral Sea Road in Kalailoa. As many of you know, I live in Kalailoa, so I'm very picky about my neighbors. And this will start construction the 4th quarter of 2022 and be operational by the 4th quarter of 2023. The company Interjects that got the contract, they're also going to supply the part of the community benefit package that they're going to be giving $35,000 a year to the Kapolei Heritage Center, which is a good thing. Also, Dreamhouse Charter School, formerly in Eva Beach, founded in 2012. They are, as I said, I'm picky about my neighbors, are starting school just down the street. They're going to begin on August 4th with I think there are 200 students now. They're adding 7th grade, so it'll be 6th and 7th grade. They took over and refurbished one of the old Navy buildings here at Barbers Point. And I go by there almost every day. It's looking really, really nice. So again, alternatives, education for our keiki, always a good thing. So that's a dream house. The Eva Refuse Convenience Center on Geiger, as of June 2020, they're working on an environmental assessment to move it. They want to move it down toward the wastewater treatment plant, which is just down the street, farther east on Geiger. So it would be part of the Honolulu wastewater treatment plant. And then next is Foodland Farms in Kamakanalii Shopping Center. Carol and I were very happy to dine there the other night at their mahi'ai table. They have a full-on restaurant inside Foodland. We're vegan. We had some incredible vegan options there. But they opened on July 15th, and got a really nice feel to it. It's wide open, and just check it out. It's they recommend going online and reserving your space just to go in there, so you don't have to wait outside because they're doing the whole physical distancing and everything. But a very good addition to the shopping center there. And then Honouliuli Middle School. This will be located just behind the Kroc Center, Kapolei. And we put in $46 million for this project. Phase 1 for 6th graders will open this fall. We don't have, the August 4th date is what's going to, is in effect, I'm pretty sure. Phase 2 is on hold. There's been a bid protest. And phase 3, from what I understand, may start in early 2021. They're going to be adding temporary portables, the latter part of phase 1, to accommodate the next grade level in August of 2021. So with the crowded conditions at Kapolei Middle School, this has been referred to in the past as East Middle School, but this is Honouliuli Middle School will be the official name. For those of you that have followed Ho'opili, that's the D.R. Horton development, east of UH West Oahu, 12,000 homes. By the end of September, they plan on having 1,000 families living in 12 urban blocks. And that's about 3,000 people. And then also Kaiser Medical Office Building, just kitty corner from Costco, right there at Kapolei Parkway and Kamakanalii Boulevard. They invested $60 million to build their medical office there in Kapolei for West Oahu residents. It's a 40,000 square foot medical office on 5.4 acres. They plan on completing by December 21st of this year and opening it up on April 5th. So another great addition to our community here. Okay. And then I did mention the veterans home across from Walmart. The governor released $4.8 million for that project, and the legislature appropriated an additional $30.1 million for that project. So that's going to be 2 stories, 135,000 square feet. And a lot of folks, a lot of vets are looking forward to that opening up. Mokulani, Campbell Companies, they sold this. It's right across from Wet and Wild. You may have seen the construction that's going on there. It's going to be a car wash, gas station, and convenience stores. And they are looking to open up the car wash November 2020. And Wakea Gardens, that's Dream House Charter School is just Mackay of Wakea Gardens, right there along Roosevelt Boulevard. That was opened in 2015. And so basically it's a 100-bedroom apartments, 100 one-bedroom apartments in Kalailoa. And they had been closed down for 6 months for remodeling. People have already started to move back in, and they will be at capacity. There's a waiting list by September 2020. And finally, West Oahu Humane Society Facility and Dog Park. For you dog lovers out there, D.R. Horton, they donated 5 acres of land to the Hawaiian Humane Society back in 2015 for their new facility, this dog park. It is located on Fort Weaver Road, about a half mile from Queens at the corner of Old Fort Weaver. Going to cost about $9 million to build, and they're going to have about 25 employees. There have been some delays. They're putting forth a proposal to establish a temporary physical presence there until they can start construction on the dog park. So again, there have been questions and phone calls from the community about the dog park. So that'll bring me to speed on that. And okay, so now I will open it up to questions. Well, yes. Susan.
So thank you, Senator. This has been very instructional. I do have a question. I think you know my concern about recycling. And the reason it's a concern is because this is an island. It is finite. I don't really understand the situation with recycling here because I came from Seattle a few years ago and we had a very, very intense recycling program, composting. There was very little trash because of all that was taken away to do something with. So here I've been a little disappointed because I don't know where to bring things.
Mm,
And one thing that we had after moving was a lot of cardboard and paper.
mm.
In order to get rid of it, I had to actually pay to get rid of it.
Wow.
So I like to know what's being done to improve the recycling here.
Okay. Well, currently, Susan, there's 160,000 single-family homes that have the three-cart curbside recycling program. Do you have the three carts out at Colina?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, there's the question right there. So I'm looking at mine right now in my front yard. So, there's a green bin for green waste that includes grass, tree trimmings, garden fruits and vegetables, Christmas, whatever. And then the mixed recyclables is in the blue bin. That's newspaper, cardboard, colored office paper, paper bags, glass bottles, jars, all metal cans, plastic containers. The materials have to be clean, no lids or caps. So that's in the blue one. And then, of course, the gray one is for your other garbage. So I'll look into this for you out of Colina to see what kind of, I'm pretty sure but I'll double check. It's because it's a private property out there that that's why it's not covered. And that's why you don't have it out there. But I'll double check on that. And, it's interesting because in looking at this issue, 70% of Oahu's municipal solid waste, it's being diverted from that landfill that's across the street from you. And as an aside, let me just add, you see that landfill, Susan, that you drive by every day as you're leaving Colina?
Yes, I see it. I do.
Okay, you're on mute again. Okay, I just wanted to tell you a quick story because when I got elected to the city council, there was a move. This was like my baptism into elected politics. There was a move by many people who live, landowners. I won't mention names, but they wanted to move that landfill over to Kunia, the base of the mountains out on Kunia Road. And obviously, when you're Colina, you have a resort area. You've got hotels that are being built out there, and let's get rid of this. And so they came to the city council. Again, I'm a freshman city councilman, and they said the guy that was in charge of the program, the project, said, "Hey, look, we're going to move it over here, and don't worry because we're going to put a double liner underneath, and that's going to make it so that there's no leachate, because that's what happens with dumps, is that all the gooey stuff, and eventually it leaks into the groundwater." And so I was assured by this person that, oh, we're going to have a double liner. It's not going to leak. So, of course, I went to the Department of Health, the Board of Water Supply, the Sierra Club, I asked them, and they just looked at me and they said, no way. It's not a question of if it's going to leak, it's when. No matter how many layers that you're going to put there, it's going to leak into the groundwater. And the location that they had chosen, Susan, for this new landfill was 250 feet away from the aquifer, the Oahu aquifer, which supplies 70% of our pure water, drinking water for Oahu. And that's where they wanted to put it. So there was a full court press. I went to my colleagues, my 8 other colleagues, and I introduced a reso and I said, look, the county shall not allow landfills to be built over aquifers or near aquifers. my colleague said, "Oh yeah, yeah, we're with you, Mike. Yeah." The day of the vote came, and my reso was defeated, 6-3. And I went back to the 6 guys that voted against my reso and said, "Hey, well, wait, you told me you're going to vote for this, and what?" And they just, they kind of hemmed and hawed. Oh yeah, well, there are other issues that came into play, and so eventually made it across the street to the state legislature, where a senator introduced a bill which was the exact opposite of mine, saying that the state shall allow landfills to be built near aquifers. And fortunately, so everybody mobilized in terms of testimony, environmental groups, the Board of Water Supply, the Department of Health, everybody went in there saying, this is a bad idea, and the bill was defeated. But anyway, I tell you that just to the story about what happens in politics and what happened to me. But so to continue on with what's happening out there, the recycling that's going place. So you've got these 3 bins serving 160,000 single family homes. But still, our problem is we don't have a local recycling plant here on Oahu, Susan. And so, which means that we ship out most of our recyclables at a very high cost. In 2019, for example, California got the largest amount of our recyclables. And then to Asian countries like Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, they buy our high five plastics. That's our, plastic water bottles or whatever, right? They buy that from Hawaii. And most of Hawaii's aluminum was sent to California. And also 400,000 pounds of aluminum was sold to companies in Saudi Arabia last year. And so what you probably don't know is that the city's investment in waste to energy, it's also, there's a disincentive to recycling more items because that waste to energy H power that's out there. Okay, so they burn trash, and that supplies 8 to 10% of our island's electricity. So the city signed an agreement with H Power to deliver 800,000 tons of trash a year to H Power to burn. But the problem is the city, they regularly fall short on that 800,000 ton obligation. And they've had to pay, the city has had to pay that company. I think Covanta is the company that runs H Power. They may have changed hands. They've had to pay more than $6 million in fees since 2013. So anyway, that just gives you like a big picture idea of what's going on in trash and help you understand what's going on. But I will look into that for you as far as Colina and see what we can do.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh,
Chris has a question.
okay, Chris.
Hey, how are you, Senator?
Hang on.
Again.
Hang on. Yeah. Sorry, guys. Little interruption there. Okay, Chris, you had a question?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for voting no on the 2502.
Yeah, yeah.
Long testimony about that.
You and about 8,000 other people.
Yeah, I figured. So my question has to do with the mail-in voting.
Yeah.
I have actually kind of a two-point question on that. The first was that I was under the impression that the first reason for doing that was because of the COVID thing and social distancing. But then I heard from the election officer, the chief elections officer on the radio, and he said, "No, this is just the way it's going to be from now on."
Yeah.
So the issue I had with it is that it didn't seem to seek any public input, any real opportunity for public input. And whereas I understand that the government can't keep putting referendums on every single thing that they're doing, I think something as major as changing an entire election system or how we vote should have gotten a little bit more input from the public on that. It kind of hails back to like the same-sex marriage issue when we first they first allowed the public to, first they were saying that the public should vote on it, and then when public voted overwhelmingly against it, the next time it came up, they decided not to let the people vote on it. And it feels like they don't, whoever the powers that be that come up with these ideas and just say, guess what, you don't get a real voice on it. Kind of feels like they're telling the public, like, we don't know what's for our own good, we're going to do this for you. And so I just want to know who came up with the idea to do this without any public input, and what was the rationale behind actually having complete mail-in and no voting.
Yeah. Actually, I'm looking. You maybe missed out. You got too busy last year, Chris, because it passed last year, statewide mail voting, and so they had the hearings and all the stuff that happened. It was Act 136 implements all elections to be conducted by mail, and then
So
So the rationale, of course, is that Hawaii's lowest voting results, not results, but polling
turnout
the entire country. And so the idea is to see this as an improvement where people just take away all the excuses, right? You got, mine arrived in the mail yesterday. They even pay the postage. You just got to fill it out and send it back. So, the jury's out on how it's going to work out in terms of how successful it's going to be. And there are some potential problems with this in terms of, let's say, a group of people, whether it's a church or a union of, let's all get together and then we're going to, and okay, bring your ballots and we're all going to vote in a particular, but I think that's just something that we're going to deal with, how we can deal with if those kinds of things start to happen. I think after this election, the whole idea will be to evaluate and see what happens. Yeah.
So what assurance do we have that our votes will be counted?
Yeah, that's a good.
We don't have that assurance. And
that's right.
There was a bill. There was, I don't know what but there was something that they talk about that the Democrats have more ballot counting observers than the Republicans. I mean, the Republicans were allowed to have only one, and the other party has 4 or more. So I don't know how they came to that conclusion for the one party to have less and the other party to have more.
Yeah. It's a very good question. That's one of the things that there's only a few other states that have implemented all mail-in, and we just have to wait and see. I mean, we'll just have to wait and see, and then see what the report is afterwards.
Okay, so is there kind of an assurance that they'll review it, and if it's not?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
When
absolutely.
he was talking, he's just like, that's just the way it's going to be from now on, and you guys got to get used to it. That was his comments on the radio. He said,
Oh, okay.
the elections officer said, that's the way it's going to be from now on. Everybody just needs to get used to it because it's
Yeah,
going to be any other way.
yeah, yeah.
Called voting booths a thing of the past.
Right,
So,
right.
okay.
Okay. Let's see. I've got a couple chat in the couple of the questions in the chat. Susan, you also asked how many people are newly unemployed due to COVID-19 shutdown in this district. What's the typical amount of unemployment payment do these folks receive? I don't have the exact numbers for this district, but unemployment in April was 22.3%, roughly close to 140,000 unemployed. Now it's 13.9%, about 85,000. That's statewide. I know that in Eva Beach is particularly hard hit with unemployment numbers. We'll get those numbers to you on that. Yeah. And then also, let's see. There was a question about the let's see here. Where's the chat? Yeah, there was a question Rodney had asked about were there any ag incentives for local growers or things like industrial hemp and bamboo? Unfortunately, Rodney, no. As I mentioned, the fiscal bill, I mean, obviously, as I talked about hemp, that's the potential is there. But because we were given the instructions, do not even deal with any bills that have appropriations, any fiscal impact, then there was a lot that was taken off the table. But the fact that we import 85 to 90%, you know this, Rodney, 85 to 90% of our food at a cost of about $3 billion. It just, when are we going to wake up and actually start focusing on food self-sufficiency? I'm not saying we can become totally self-sufficient. What I am saying is there's a lot of, there's over, I think there's around 800, I think the number was given to me, 800,000 acres of ag land that's not being used. And so our real problem is we got plenty of land, we don't have the farmers. And that's why Future Farmers of America, youth groups like that, every opportunity that I get when I speak to young people, my punchline is this: farming is a noble profession, no less noble than being a doctor, lawyer, teacher, businessman, whatever, because you are providing something that all of us have in common. We all eat, and this is right. And so every time I go to the 4-H or FFA meetings and talk with the kids and look at the projects, and they're just so into it. I mean, they're excited about what they're doing. And so we just need to keep growing those young people who are interested in farming. Yeah.
Roger that. It's working well at UH West Oahu, and quite a few of the middle schools or high schools have their aquaponics and other programs going.
Yeah. Okay, it's 10:01, and I've got a conference call I've got to get on, but thank you guys for tuning in. Very much appreciated. Anything that I'll go through the chat questions if we didn't get to anything, and any additional questions that you have or concerns, send me an email. And thanks for tuning in. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Aloha.
Aloha.